Before we start, hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to hear almost got one man killed for telling the truth. The screen fades in, dim light flickering off rusted bars, a faint hum of broken fluorescent bulbs, and a single voice whispering into a recorder. If they find this, tell my wife I did the right thing. That voice belonged to Officer Daniel Royce, a corrections officer at Rikers Island, one of the most notorious prisons in America. And what he captured inside those walls was never meant to see daylight. It started with a single tape, an old handheld recorder hidden inside his locker. On it were sounds that sent chills down the spine of anyone who dared listen. Screams echoing through concrete hallways, the muffled thud of fists, and the faint metallic clang of a cell door, slammed shut and never opened again. But that wasn't the worst part. In the background, between the chaos, a voice could be heard, low, calm, and commanding. Make sure he doesn't walk out of here breathing. The date on that tape? March 17th, 2014. The victim? An inmate named Luis Delgado, serving time for petty theft. The man giving orders? Allegedly, one of Rikers' own captains. Royce knew what this meant. He wasn't just a guard anymore. He was now the only witness to a murder carried out behind the prison's concrete curtain by the very people sworn to uphold the law. He tried to report it through official channels, but every door he knocked on seemed to close tighter than the last. Files went missing. Cameras malfunctioned. And when he asked about Delgado's body, he was told, flatly, that the inmate had transferred upstate. Except no transfer record existed. That was when Royce realized the truth. Rikers wasn't just a prison. It was a system built on silence, and he had just broken a code. From that moment, his life turned into a countdown. Anonymous notes slipped into his locker. His tires slashed in the staff parking lot. And one night, after his shift, he found a bullet casing resting neatly on his windshield. The message was clear. Stop talking, or you'll end up like Delgado. But Royce wasn't backing down. He was going to expose everything. Every cover-up, every beating, every inmate who disappeared without a trace. He just didn't know that the people watching him weren't outsiders. They were inside his own unit. And on the night of April 2nd, 2014, one of them decided to make sure Officer Royce would never talk again. When Officer Daniel Royce returned to work the next morning, the air inside Rikers felt different, heavier. Every step echoed like it didn't belong to him anymore. Conversations stopped when he entered a room. The cafeteria went silent when he sat down. And every inmate who once called him Officer D now looked away. Something had shifted. The day after he found that bullet casing, he met quietly with an old friend in internal affairs, Detective Carla Mendez. She had worked with him years before on a drug smuggling case involving dirty guards. And if there was anyone he could trust, it was her. He told her everything about the recording, the missing inmate, the fake transfer papers. Mendez didn't flinch. She just said one thing. Keep your head down, Dan. If this is what I think it is, you're not fighting guards. You're fighting the administration. She promised to look into it, but weeks passed. No updates. No call. Nothing. Inside the prison, the intimidation grew bolder. Someone started rewriting his shift logs, making it look like he wasn't showing up for duty. His locker was searched twice in 1 week. One of his supervisors, Captain Irving, called him into his office and spoke in a calm, unsettling tone. You've been asking too many questions. Rikers runs on loyalty, Royce. You either learn that, or you disappear. That same week, Royce noticed a new inmate in his block, a tall, quiet man with a spider tattoo across his neck. He wasn't on the roster, and when Royce tried to check the database, the system flashed access denied. But late one night, as Royce was making his rounds, the inmate approached the bars and whispered, "You're looking for Delgado. You're not supposed to." Royce froze. "Who are you?" he asked. The inmate looked around nervously, eyes darting to the ceiling cameras. They moved him to the basement. Unit 9, no cameras, no record. You didn't hear that from me. The basement, a restricted wing that only ranking officers and medical staff were authorized to enter. It was where disciplinary transfers went, and sometimes never came back. The next day, Royce used a stolen access card to slip into Unit 9. The air was damp and reeked of bleach. Faded blood stains marked the walls near the showers. He moved carefully, flashlight trembling in his hand, until he found the door marked medical storage. Inside, he discovered a folder taped beneath a supply cart. On the front, a handwritten label, D. 179, Delgado's inmate ID. He flipped through the pages, photographs of injuries, autopsy notes signed off but never filed, and at the bottom, a memo stamped confidential from the warden's office. Subject deceased during altercation. Terminate inquiry immediately. File archived. Royce's hand shook. This was it proof. Proof that Delgado didn't transfer. Proof of the cover-up. But before he could leave, a shadow appeared behind him. Heavy boots echoed down the corridor. Someone else was in the basement. He turned off his flashlight and ducked behind shelf. The footsteps grew louder. A flashlight beam swept across the room, then paused right where he stood. "I know you're down here, Royce," a voice said. "You should have kept your mouth shut." The beam of light froze on the folder in Royce's hand, and in that split second, everything went black. Daniel Royce woke up to darkness, the kind that hums in your ears. His wrists ached, tied behind a cold metal chair. A single light buzzed above him, flickering like it was afraid to stay on. His head throbbed. The last thing he remembered was the flashlight in the basement and a voice. When his eyes adjusted, he realized where he was, one of the segregation cells. No windows, no clock, just a steel door and the constant dripping of a leaking pipe. He'd been locked in the same kind of room they used for punishment, but this time it wasn't on record. Hours passed, or maybe days, before the door finally opened. A silhouette filled the doorway. "Captain Irving." "You made a mess, Royce," Irving said, stepping into the room. "You think you're the first one to find something? Rikers has been cleaning up after itself for decades." Royce's voice was hoarse. "You killed Delgado." Irving chuckled, tapping his baton against the floor. "Delgado was a problem. Some men don't make it in here. You should have known better than to dig him up." He dropped a small recorder on the floor, Royce's recorder, the same one that held the audio proof. "This belongs to us now," Irving said. "You're going to forget everything you think you know, or you'll vanish like the rest." He left without another word. The door slammed shut, and Royce sat there, chest pounding. They weren't just covering up a murder. They were running something much bigger. A day later, during a food drop, a folded note was slipped under his tray. "Mendez is alive. She's looking for you. Basement, North Block, 2 a.m. M." The M could only mean one thing. Mendez had found him. That night, Royce waited for the guard rotation. When the lights dimmed, he used a broken spoon handle to pry open the vent screws. It took nearly an hour, but eventually he slipped through the narrow shaft and crawled his way toward the basement. The corridor was silent. He followed the flicker of emergency lights until he reached the North Block. That's when he heard it. Faint breathing, a wheeze echoing through the walls. He turned the corner and froze. In the middle of a small, windowless room sat a man chained to a bed, skin pale, eyes sunken, but unmistakably alive. Luis Delgado. His voice cracked when he saw Royce. "You shouldn't have come," Delgado whispered. "They never let anyone walk out of here." Royce rushed forward, trying to undo the chains, but Delgado grabbed his wrist. "Listen to me. It's not just the guards. The warden, he's selling inmates, fake transfers, private facilities. They call it the pipeline." Royce's stomach dropped. It wasn't just about brutality. It was trafficking, moving inmates off the books for profit. Suddenly, the intercom crackled to life. "Officer Royce, step away from the prisoner." Cameras blinked red above them. They'd been watching the whole time. Then came the sound, boots pounding down the hallway. Royce looked at Delgado one last time. "I'll get you out," he said. Delgado shook his head. "You won't have time." Before Royce could answer, the door burst open, blinding light and shouting voices filled the room. A shot rang out, then silence. When Royce opened his eyes again, he was lying face down in the corridor, Delgado's chains hanging empty, the bed overturned. Delgado was gone. The hallway reeked of gunpowder and bleach. Sirens wailed somewhere deep within the prison, but down here in the forbidden wing, it was only the sound of boots, radios, and fear. Daniel Royce staggered to his feet, pressing a trembling hand against the bullet graze on his shoulder. Blood soaked through his uniform, but he barely felt it. Delgado was gone, vanished again. He stumbled forward, his flashlight flickering against the damp concrete. Somewhere in this maze, the truth was still buried. The files, the records, the proof. He had to find it, not just for Delgado, but for every inmate who had disappeared in silence. As he reached the junction, a faint light glowed from under a steel door marked Archives, Staff Only. He forced it open. Rows of filing cabinets lined the room like tombstones. Dust-covered folders were stacked floor to ceiling. Names, inmate numbers, transfer orders, medical reports. The air was stale, frozen in time. Royce pulled open one drawer and froze. Project 09, Transfer Pipeline. Each file listed inmates marked as deceased or transferred, but the destinations were strange. Private correctional facilities, some out of state, others overseas. The signatures on the documents were all the same. Warden Henry K. Sloan. He felt the weight of it. This wasn't just Rikers. This was a network. A machine built to erase people for profit. Human lives traded for silence and money. Royce stuffed the files into a duffel bag he found on the floor. He had to get out. But before he could move, the door creaked open behind him. You really couldn't leave it alone, could you? Warden Sloan stood in the doorway, tall, expressionless, his uniform crisp as if untouched by the rot around him. Two armed officers flanked him. You think anyone cares what you found? Sloan said calmly. You'll be labeled unstable, violent, maybe even suicidal, just like the others who talked. Royce raised his hand slowly, eyes locked on the warden. You killed Delgado. You killed your own men. You sold them. Sloan's lips twitched, the faintest hint of a smile. I did what the system demanded. You think Riker survives on tax money alone? The state doesn't want reform, Royce. They want results. And results cost lives. For a moment, the world felt still. Royce's heartbeat pounded in his ears like thunder. Then, in one desperate move, he grabbed the pepper spray from his belt and lunged. The room erupted into chaos. The guard stumbled, coughing, blinded. Royce sprinted toward the door, clutching the bag of evidence. Shots cracked through the walls as he ran through the labyrinth of corridors, weaving past shattered lights and alarm sirens. He burst into the open yard, rain slamming down in sheets. Outside the gates, through the blur of headlights, a car engine roared to life. Detective Carla Mendez leaned out the window, yelling, "Get in!" Royce dove into the passenger seat, slamming the door as bullets ricocheted off the back window. Mendez hit the gas. They tore through the outer gates, sparks flying as the car scraped against the metal barrier. The tires screamed against wet asphalt until the prison disappeared behind them, a silhouette swallowed by the storm. Hours later, they were parked in a quiet corner of the Bronx, under the amber glow of a flickering streetlight. Mendez's hands trembled on the steering wheel. Dan, you know what this means, right? If we release this, you're done. They'll come after you. After me, everyone. Royce leaned back, clutching the soaked folder in his lap. If we don't, they'll keep doing it. Delgado, those inmates, they'll just be names erased from history. He opened the bag, spreading the documents across the dashboard. Photos of battered inmates. Bank transfers. Signed authorizations from state officials. A chain that reached far beyond Rikers. Mendez pulled out her phone and started recording. This is Detective Carla Mendez and Officer Daniel Royce. We are submitting evidence of organized inmate trafficking sanctioned within Rikers Island Correctional Facility under the supervision of Warden Henry K. Sloan. Before she could finish, the sound of tires screeched nearby. Headlights flooded the car. A black SUV pulled up behind them. They found us, Mendez whispered. Royce grabbed the files and shoved them into a plastic bag. Upload the video. Now, she hit send, uploading it to multiple encrypted drives and news servers. But before the progress bar could finish, the SUV doors flew open. Men in tactical gear stormed forward, shouting commands. Royce jumped out of the car and ran toward the alley, clutching the evidence. Rain hammered down. Footsteps closed in. He turned a corner, dead end. He pressed his back against the wall, breathing hard. The flashlights drew closer. One voice shouted, "Royce, you can't win this." Royce looked down at the recorder still in his pocket, the same one that started it all. He pressed record. His voice trembled. "If anyone finds this, the truth is in the files. Rikers isn't a prison. It's a graveyard for the forgotten." Then he ran. The last thing he saw was the blinding glare of a flashlight, and then the sound of gunfire. When the story hit the news 2 days later, the nation froze. An anonymous video surfaced online, Mendez recording, naming the warden, showing the documents, the photos, the dates. Within 48 hours, Rikers Island went into federal lockdown. Investigations swept through every wing, uncovering files that confirmed Royce's claims. But Daniel Royce was never found. No body, no trace. Some say he escaped. Others believe he was buried in one of the unmarked graves near the old prison yard. But one thing was certain, the tape survived. Weeks later, a reporter at a New York radio station received a brown envelope with no return address. Inside, a flash drive, labeled in shaky handwriting. Rikers, the real story. The drive contained one final audio file. Royce's voice. "Calm. Steady. If this reaches you, then they didn't win. The system feeds on silence. But remember, silence is a choice." Then static. The clip spread like wildfire across the internet. Millions watched, debated, argued. Some called him a whistleblower, others a traitor. But deep down, everyone knew one truth. The island had secrets that would never sleep again. And somewhere, in the shadows of a city that never forgives, a man who once wore a badge was still watching, waiting for the world to ask the question he died trying to answer. How many more secrets does Rikers still bury? If this story shook you, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment. Do you think Officer Royce survived? And tell me, should we dig deeper into what happened inside Rikers after the lockdown? Subscribe if you dare.